And a very warm welcome to Middle East Matters. I'm Sanam Shantier. Coming up on this week's show, the world's worst humanitarian crisis escalates. This while NGOs struggle to deliver aid to Yemen. Debunking stereotypes about Islam, we're joined by Egyptian journalist Khaled Diab to talk about his book, Islam for the Politically Incorrect. Also coming up, World Cup fever hits Iran, but in the Islamic Republic, it's about more than just football. It's about freedom, with women defying a long-standing ban of watching sporting events with men. We start with Yemen, a country beset by the world's worst humanitarian crisis and the intervention of foreign powers with their own interests. It's also one of the most challenging places to deliver aid, so NGOs have their work cut out for them.
It's known as the Tyre Republic.
We live over there. Do you see it? That's our home.
A shanty town of clay and rubber that hasn't stopped growing since the war began. In these unsanitary conditions, this father lives with his 8 children.
Everything is more expensive with the war. We can't work anymore. All we can do is try to survive and look for food.
Like everyone else here, the family depend on the aid brought to the area once a month. They're allocated a bit of oil, flour, beans, the bare minimum. But with more displaced people arriving every day, NGOs admit they can't always provide for everyone.
The need is increasing on a daily basis. As you can see or witness, there are a flow of IDPs coming from the conflict area. So the burden here is becoming much more higher.
2 in 3 people in Yemen need aid, but the war makes distribution difficult, and Western NGOs fear for their staff's safety. Solène arrived from France a few weeks ago. To show neutrality, she travels around without an armed escort. She says her security is assured by a list of contacts established in advance and a strict itinerary she never strays from.
Every half hour at each one of these landmarks, we contact a person back at the base to notify them that we're there. It means that we're in regular contact with them, and if we ever lose contact, they know which points we're in between.
You can't take too many precautions here, and to blend in as much as possible with Yemeni women, Solène never leaves her car without wearing a veil. We're 15 kilometers from the front line. In these remote mountains, people are no longer able to farm. This French NGO distributes money to the most vulnerable, €60 per family per month.
Why distribute cash rather than basic supplies?
Because while fleeing the fighting, some of the people got into debt trying to buy food, so their first priority is paying that back. Others will need food, still others might need money to repair their homes or buy clothes. So this allows us to adapt to each specific need.
For security reasons, each field visit lasts no longer than an hour, and it's time to get going again. 150 kilometers away, Solène lives with other French aid workers in the secure villa, complete with high wall, guards, vehicle checks, and a specially equipped safe room.
If there's a serious threat, we come straight in here. As you can see, it's behind 2 reinforced doors. We also have metallic shutters, so if there are explosions, we're protected. We have supplies of water, of food, we have mattresses, gas to cook, everything we'd need to survive locked up in these 2 rooms for 2 weeks if necessary.
And because leaving the compound is often too risky, there's also a terrace to lift the spirits. The need in Yemen is great, but with omnipresent danger and fort-like living conditions, Western aid workers here remain few and far between.
Now it's time for this week's special guest. Khaled Diab is an Egyptian journalist based in Tunisia. He's an atheist Arab of Muslim upbringing, and with Islam being one of the most contentious, misunderstood and polarising issues of our time, he decided to pen a book called Islam for the Politically Incorrect, and he joins us from Tunis. Khaled, thank you very much for speaking to us here on France 24. What drove you to write this book?
Well, I mean, you just need to look around you. The state of affairs at the moment both on the global level and on the local level, is very alarming, and it has been for a number of years. And things don't appear to be getting better. They seem to be getting worse, in fact. And I thought I needed to do my bit. I had to go into greater depth to show and highlight, the misconceptions and misperceptions. There's also a personal angle in that, I've grown up both in Europe and the Middle East, and just sometimes, the misconceptions and myths are prevalent about both sides really bother me at times. It just doesn't bear a resemblance to the reality I've experienced and encountered.
Now, I want to delve a little deeper. Your first chapter is about the status of women in Islam, because there are, of course, a plethora of misconceptions surrounding this issue. Tell us about some of them.
Well, one of the most bewildering misconceptions, in my view, as someone who has grown up around Muslim women for my entire life, is the notion that Muslim women are weak. This myth that Muslim women are weak and submissive, is something that, defies all the reality and facts that I'm aware of. It's not about conservative or liberal. Muslim women can be strong even when they're conservative. You just have to look at the matriarch of many traditional families to know how tough as nails Muslim women can be.
Now, we're living in times when the threats of terrorist attacks are at an all-time high. We switch on the TV, sometimes we hear pundits say Islam is the religion of war and terror. But in fact, according to statistics, a large number of those involved in terrorism don't practice their faith regularly. Isn't that right?
Well, it's right and it's not right. People are motivated to commit terrorist acts for a myriad reasons and a plethora of different motives, sometimes not even well understood by the perpetrator themselves. That's my takeaway from the various cases I've been aware of. Some certainly don't practice their faith, but there are some who would be deeply insulted to hear them described as not practicing their faith when they feel that the act of violence they perform is in service of their faith and their faith community. I think the more pertinent question, because terrorism is in the eye of the beholder, the more pertinent question is whether Islam is more or less violent than other major religions, like, say, Christianity, its main rival. And in my analysis in my book, In Islam for the Politically Incorrect, is I conclude that they're more or less equivalent.
And so, as a result of this, we have seen a rise in Islamophobia across the globe.
Yes, Islamophobia has become a major issue in several parts of the world, whether in Europe and America or in India or as we see Myanmar and places like that. And the peddling of fear is one of the major factors behind the rise in Islamophobia. Because Muslims are portrayed as bloodthirsty and dangerous members of society when the vast majority of them are just, peace-loving and ordinary citizens, and this is highly problematic for the future.
Khaled, let's end with a quick fire round of questions, and you can just respond with true or false. Let's go. Sharia is Islamic law.
False.
Islam demands brutal punishments for those that break the law.
True and false.
Islam condemns converts to death.
False when we talk about the Quran.
Islam promotes polygamy.
False. And true.
No sex or alcohol in Islam.
Most certainly false.
In Islam, martyrs will be rewarded with virgins in paradise.
False.
Now, if you want more detailed answers to those questions, you can always read Khaled Diab's book. It's Islam for the Politically Incorrect. Thank you very much for speaking to us here on Middle East Matters, sir. We finish with Iran, where millions of women flocked to cafes, restaurants and outdoor venues last week to watch Iran's World Cup victory against Morocco. In doing this, they defied a long-standing ban in the country of women watching sporting events in public with men. Our correspondent Reza Saya reports.
At a park in northern Tehran, World Cup excitement reaches a fever pitch as Team Iran takes on Morocco. At the end of 90 minutes, the score knotted at 0, the crowd in a frenzy.
But lost in the excitement is something that's rarely seen here in the Islamic Republic.
Women side by side with men, reveling in the thrill of sports in public.
It's so incredible, actually, because of the government, we cannot do it every day.
After Iran's Islamic Revolution in 1979, the government banned women from entering sporting events. Mixed crowds enjoying games was un-Islamic, authorities said. The outcome has been nearly 4 decades of men's sports with no female fans. Kimi and Mohammed are engaged to be married. They say this event is proof that it's time for change.
If they come see this environment and see how easily we sit side by side watching the game, maybe they'll be convinced to allow women into stadiums.
Some are not waiting for the ban to be lifted. In April, several women dressed as men to sneak into a football game in Tehran. Some got in, others were detained. This year, Iran's president reportedly pledged to allow women access to football games. Many Iranians say it's time for him to deliver.
Just like how we're sitting now with our families, our husbands, our fathers, and watching with excitement, we want to be able to watch in stadiums as well.
With less than 2 minutes to go in overtime, Iran scores to pull off an unlikely win. The crowd erupts in cheer. When the PA announcer pleads for order, the crowd calms, convincing Iranian women to end their demand to enter sporting events may not be as easy.
Well, that's it for this edition of Middle East Matters. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can always visit our Facebook page. That's Middle East Matters, France 24, or Twitter. Thank you so much for watching.